he would be class of like 50. Okay. But where this guy has a special place in my heart, he put his name on the waiting list for Masters tickets in 1964, and it came up in 1989, where this Wabash alum, who will remain nameless, has had two tickets to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the Masters since '89. So he took me in 2016, the year where Jordan Spieth blew that famous lead. So we were sitting on the 13th hole on Sunday, and you just heard, 10 minutes later, as he was duffing his 6-stroke lead away. But Ryan, I'd be curious, with as very well connected as you are and have been over your career in Indianapolis, if you wouldn't mind, just towards the end, just compartmentalizing some on how the Wabash alumni system has maybe helped. I just know, like, my wife is a DePaul grad, communications through DePaul, and after this hour meeting in our lobby this morning, our close friend from Wabash is like, now, Eric, I know that if Wabash had accepted women, your wife would have had a good career coming out as a Wabash grad. But no, in all honesty, some of my best friends went to Wabash. A Wabash grad introduced me to my wife. So again, nothing but respect to that institution. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and start our meeting today. And thanks everybody for coming. It looks like we have effectively muted everybody, which is fantastic. So just please remember, if you would like to speak later, and I'm as guilty as anyone, just please make sure to unmute yourself. Thank you to our October Zoom meeting sponsor, past President Trent Cowles, for September and October. All in-person club meetings have been shifted to virtual through 2020. We are hoping to meet in person once a month starting in January 21. But that's the most adorable picture I've ever seen. So next week we've got Christina Fugati, chair for franchise and distribution at Ice Miller, and then for an election follow-up, Phil Orlando from Federated Hermes. So Federated Hermes is my grandfather's company out of Pittsburgh, and they are one of the powerhouses in the particularly boring money market space. They have $500 billion in the money market space. So as far as when people are entering the market and fleeing the market, in March and April, they're one of the only two companies in the U.S., publicly traded financial institutions, that had positive money coming in just into their, again, exciting money markets paying 1%. We put out a survey for our Kiwanians to give us their input on how they feel around the COVID discussions, starting meetings in January and February. Again, now we're leaning towards the second Thursday of each month. 2nd January, we've got our February speaker, who is actually a Barnes and Thornburg guy, Mr. Don Kniebel, Ryan. So if you have any stories about Don that I can use to embarrass him in a couple of months, I'll appreciate that very much. But no, the Columbia Club will have their COVID practices in place. And if there is anything in particular that people would contribute beyond social distancing, masks, sanitizers, and not coming if you're not feeling well, with a resurgence in cases, it is kind of coming back to into the spotlight. Our Foundation Board and Fostering Families Committee has donated their program money to the Salvation Army Angel Tree Program for Christmas assistance, sponsoring 180 children through the Salvation Army Angel Tree Program, which I think was a great leadership by the board. And thanks to the Fostering Families Committee for handing over that $9,000. Angel Tree is also our 4th quarter service project. So check out the newsletter or our website on the details on how to help make Christmas special for those in need this year. I know that they are looking for volunteers at Fountain Square in particular. So if anybody has any availability or interest in the coming weeks, please let me know. We recently took on another Key Club at Speedway High School and are looking for a Kiwanis sponsor. Please let the Kiwanis office know if you're interested. And again, everybody knows I had worked with K kids in the 4th and 5th grade space. In the Key Club space, these kids or young adults are very self-directed, and it would be about an hour a month of a commitment to be that advisor. You might consider giving to our club in lieu of paying for lunch to help. Any amount would be appreciated. Personally, if I commute from 96 and Keystone downtown for the Thursday meetings, I'll tend to donate just the equivalent time I've saved and the productivity I've gained here at work, which Taylor has told me, yes, Taylor, I do make about $11 an hour. So that's pretty accurate. I'd like to welcome all the guests in attendance as I'm looking through. Jason Burke, thanks for joining us. Richard DeLeon, thanks for joining us. And it looks like we have a strong showing of members today. Karen Burns, if you don't mind, I am going to turn it over to you for an update on bell ringing, please.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, it's that time of year, right? And we've all been wondering what was going to happen with the Salvation Army. And they are, in fact, still going to be out at kettles. It's very important to the Army. It's a significant source of revenue. And so they do want to do that. I don't know that Duke is on the call, so I don't know what Rotary's doing, but we're still competing against Rotary. So we have a couple of options on bell ringing, and I'm hoping that Taylor will help me with this. We have two options that have been presented to us. One is to be out at the Kroger at 71st and Binford again, where we're in the vestibule ringing. There are going to be lots of precautions taken. Obviously, masks are to be worn not only by the people ringing the bell, but by Kroger customers as well. And hand sanitizing and creating social distance between you and the kettle so that you're not going to get too close to people. So that's one option. The other new option that came up was the Fashion Mall at Keystone, which is awesome, except that it's not quite as awesome as I had wanted it to be, because it would be outside, and it would be outside at the entrance down by Brooks Brothers and the theater. So we're sort of down at that other end of the mall versus where I really wanted to be, which was standing in the middle of the Apple store or in front of C's Candies. But apparently they weren't listening to me on this. So one is an outside location at the mall, and one is an inside location at Kroger. So what I want to know, and I'd love to have, maybe if you have some comments on here, Taylor posted that survey. We sent the survey out. I want to know whether or not you're just not comfortable ringing the bell in person, or if you have a strong preference over being outside, which has some advantages and disadvantages, or being inside at 71st and Binford. We switched to that Kroger because we got really good responses and lots of traffic, and we raised good money there. So I would like to hear from you. In any case, the option of doing virtual kettles is still there, where we can help ask our friends and colleagues to donate. And then, of course, we'll ask you to donate as well. If you're planning to give to the Salvation Army this year, we're hoping that you will mark that towards our Kiwanis competition. So can I get some feedback from people, how you feel about this, how you feel about the various options, whether you'd rather be inside, outside, or home in your living room?
No, thank you very much, Karen. So having rung at that Kroger on Binford last year, and I see Roger entered in, he liked Kroger also last year. But with that door constantly opening, letting in fresh air, and us staying away from the kettle itself, that'd be my personal preference. I'd certainly volunteer there. Like you said, the traffic, we'll eat lunch at that Keystone Crossing food court all the time, and the mall traffic in general seems like it's kind of socially distanced itself, a quarter of what it had been this time last year. But for me, I like that Kroger very much. And with the fresh air, I feel like that would kind of make me feel a little better from the bell ringing scenario. But with that being said, right on time, I know how Graham likes to start right on time. I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce today's speaker, Ryan Vaughn, president of Indiana Sports Corp.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm retired now, so you can start whenever you want to. I'm the ex-president here, but it's really a pleasure and an honor to introduce Ryan Vaughn, who's accomplished quite a bit here in Indianapolis. I won't read his entire bio because it's rather lengthy and distinguished, but Ryan was elected Indiana Sports Corp president in September 2014. He's the Sports Corp's 6th president. The nation's first sports commission was founded in 1979. And a reminder, their mission is to create positive impact by hosting world-class sporting events that enhance vibrancy in the community, build civic pride, drive economic impact, and media exposure. Before leading the Sports Corp staff, Ryan served as chief of staff for Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard for more than 2 years, and in that role, he oversaw development and implementation of Indy's strategic planning initiatives, public policy development, financial security, and management of the agency directors and deputy mayors. Previously, he was a lawyer with Barnes and Thornburg. I'm sure he knows our fellow Kiwanian, and maybe at one point he'll come to a meeting, Bob Grand, but a great guy in Bob. And in addition to his legal practice, Vaughn, Ryan served as counselor of the Indianapolis-Marion County City Council from 2007 to 2012. He's had an opportunity to serve on so many boards that it's probably easier for me to tell you the ones he's not served on, but a couple of the more distinguished have been the Super Bowl host committee and the host committee for the 2015 Final Four. And he serves on, again, a number of other civic boards. He's a graduate of Wabash College, earned his law degree from Indiana University. I've had the pleasure of working with his wife, Heather, here at Butler, who's done a great job for us. I know this will be an interesting presentation as we have so many potential, knock on wood, upcoming great events in Indianapolis. So Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Graham. I don't know who's running your slideshow presentation there, but could you pull that picture up again just real quick? Maybe. So it's always super awkward when you show up to give a speech and you're wearing the exact same thing that you're wearing in the picture that introduces you to the group. So you can pull that down now. Thank you very much. And I am very good friends with your fellow Kiwanian Bob Grand. And I talk to him probably once or twice a week. I will let him know that he needs to improve his attendance greatly at these meetings. And I will tell you a little thing. I'm so close to Bob, he likes to tease me a lot. When you were reading that introduction, it reminds me of what he says about me sometimes when he's introducing me to people. He says, Ryan Vaughn is somebody who used to be somebody. And that's how he introduces me to people nowadays. So, but no, I'm really pleased to be with you all. Thank you for giving me this audience. I wish, I think like we all do, we could be in person and I could shake your hands and see your faces. But nevertheless, I'm happy to be here and happy to talk a little bit about Indiana Sports Corp and our mission and how we got to where we are today and where we're headed. And then most importantly, I'm excited to answer your questions. You know, I logged on a little early and quickly discovered that you all know much more about sports than I do as I was over listening to your conversation. So I may learn as much from you today as you do from me about our mission. But one of the things I like to do when I start a speech, and this is a little challenging on video conferences, just by show of hands before today, who's heard of the Indiana Sports Corp? All right, almost everybody. Now the next question, and I promise I won't call on anybody, who could tell me what the Indiana Sports Corp does? Yep, that's about right. So a lot of people have heard of us, but a lot of people don't fully understand what we do on a day-to-day basis or what our core mission is. The mission of the Indiana Sports Corp in a broad sense is to advance and inspire our community through sports. We largely do that by competing against other cities for the right to host major sporting events. So think to yourself, men's Final Fours, NBA All-Star Game, college football championship, Olympic trials, whether they're in gymnastics or swimming or what have you, and then a variety of other NCAA championships that maybe aren't televised that take place in our community, cross country, rowing. We had fencing championships last year. And we do that really to impact our community in 4 key areas. You know, the first is we really want to drive the economic vitality of our community. And what that means is we want to attract people from around the globe and around the country to visit Indiana, to spend money arriving at our airport, to stay in our hotels, to visit our restaurants, to visit our other attractions that they may not be here specifically for, like the Idle Museum or the Children's Museum. It's really to drive, you know, the economy of downtown. Right now, well, I shouldn't say right now, but before the pandemic, we had nearly 80,000 workers in the donut counties that were working in the field of hospitality, working at hotels and restaurants and concert venues and things of that nature. And we view one part of our mission is to support that effort by filling up our calendar with exciting events. The second focus for us is really to put Indianapolis's name on a national and global media platform in a positive light, right? Every city you can think of has its own sort of identity and reputation, right? You think of Paris, you think of great food, you think of Nashville, you think of great music. And when you think of Indy, we hope you think of great sports and all that associated with that and the vitality of a community associated with sports. We are not, I would say, a natural tourist destination in the sense that we are not on the coast, we are not in a mountain range, but we are a city that offers great hospitality, and we use sports as a way to leverage that moment so that the world can see us. I mean, the Super Bowl was viewed in almost every country in the world. Tens of millions of people will watch the Final Four. And we will welcome media from around the world. We will credential almost 2,500 media from around the world who will be in Indy to watch the Final Four in April. So it's a great media moment for the city. The third, in this audience in particular, the third element that we really focus on is civic engagement, right? So how do we attract events that really bring our community together and give people an opportunity to engage in an event, whether or not you have a ticket to the event? So, you know, we do that primarily through volunteerism. So we host, you know, multiple events every year, some of the largest events in the world, and we simply could not do that without thousands upon thousands of volunteers who give of their time, their energy, their intellectual capital, helping us build the events. And then, of course, that branded and very real sense of Hoosier hospitality. I will tell you, you know, before taking this job, I didn't spend a lot of time professionally outside of Indianapolis. I do now, meeting with event right holders or other cities or my peer organizations in other states. And the thing I hear the most about what differentiates Indianapolis from other cities we compete against isn't our award-winning airport or our award-winning, you know, Lucas Oil Stadium or Convention Center. It is genuinely just how nice and helpful people are. and that Hoosier hospitality is very real and very much appreciated in a way, frankly, I didn't necessarily appreciate it as much as I do today, having spoken with our peers from around the country. So that's 1, 2, and 3, and our fourth pillar, and not to be at all overlooked, and it's fourth in number only, not in importance, is that we try to use every major sports moment we have to have a positive impact on the youth in our community. I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but you know, we want to make sure that you know, the game for us is the means to the end, right? So when we attract the Big Ten football championship to choose Indianapolis, yes, we're doing so because we want to host the championship, but we're also doing so knowing that it gives us a moment to have positive impact in the youth in our community. So, for example, one of the things that we routinely host is swimming and diving championships at the IU Natatorium, whether they're Olympic or they're collegiate. Every time we host one of those championships, we do free learn to swim classes for kids in our community. And we specifically try and target African American and Latino populations because they have a very high rate of drowning. And so we work in those communities to bring those kids to the natatorium. We put them through a multi-day learn to swim class. And one of the things we've been doing the last few years is that if we get kids of a certain proficiency, we will actually pay for them to become certified lifeguards. We will pay for them to go into the course, become certified lifeguards. And if they pass that course and they become certified, we have an agreement with the city of Indianapolis where the city will hire them to work at the pool in the neighborhood in which they're raised. And so what you'll see on the news during the Division I swimming and diving championships is that Olympians from all over the country are competing here through their colleges and the fastest pool in the world. What you may not see is that there are kids in our neighborhood who are learning life-saving skills, getting career development in the form of a certification and potentially even summer jobs. And that's a very important part of our mission. So a little bit, now you know a little bit about what we do and why we do it, but one of the interesting questions that I frequently get is, why did it start? You know, where did this idea of Indianapolis as a sports town, or what we've been known for a long time as an amateur sports town, originate? The answer is, you know, it originated just over 40 years ago in 1979. We were actually the first sports commission in the country. And for reference point, there are now more than 500 across the country. So in a very real way, we were the founders of an entire industry of attracting sports as a point of tourism. Indianapolis, like most major communities in the mid-70s, was facing an economic problem in its downtown core. They were experiencing pretty massive suburban flight. Large swaths of the population that lived in downtown were moving to surrounding communities. And what that effectively meant was that Indianapolis was losing its density. It was losing its industry in its core. It was losing its neighborhood population, which is a real problem not only for the city of Indianapolis, but also for the state of Indiana, because Indianapolis, as you're probably aware, is the leading economic driver for the entire state. So this was a real challenge, and a real challenge also pretty unique to Indiana, because unlike our surrounding states, Indianapolis is by far the lead driver of the economy. Where you look at an Ohio that has a Cincinnati, a Columbus, and a Cleveland, that's not really true here. So there were a lot of civic leaders who were engaged in an effort to figure out, how do we address this challenge? What does our path forward look like? They assembled and quite literally hopped on a plane and took a retreat to New York. They talked about several different strategies to revitalize our downtown and to really help drive not only the economy via business, but also via tourism. And what they settled on, one of those strategies they settled on was that, hey, we have an opportunity to really become the amateur sports capital of the world. And with that would come, you know, the opportunity to expose Indianapolis to the rest of the world in a positive way, which I just talked about as part of our media mission, and the opportunity to drive capital investment in our downtown via hotels and venues and things of that nature. So their timing couldn't have been much better. In 1979, as we were being founded, so too was Congress adopting the Amateur Sports Act. The Amateur Sports Act, in essence, was an act of Congress that formed what you now know today as Olympic national governing bodies. So USA Gymnastics, USA Track and Field, USA Swimming, USA Diving. Those are common nomenclatures known to all of us, but prior to 1979, there was no single body that controlled all of these sports from an Olympic perspective. In fact, there was a lot of competition between, you know, the athletic clubs and the AAUs of the world. And so with the formation, with the adoption of the Amateur Sports Act and the creation of these new entities, was born one of our key strategies, which is going to attract those newly formed sports organizations to choose Indianapolis as the place that they would locate. And today, we are home to many of those organizations, and we've sort of cycled through being home to some and then not others, but we're still home to USA Track and Field, still home to USA Gymnastics, still home to USA Diving. And we have a great Olympic history and tradition. That same strategy was really founded on the idea that not only would we create the sports business here, meaning we would attract the employees, they would house their office, but we would also do so in an effort to leverage bringing their championships here, which we've done to a great deal. We've hosted, I think 9 Olympic diving trials. We've hosted world and national track and field championships. We've hosted world and national gymnastics championships, and these have been great moments for us as a community. It's been a really kind of a fantastic strategy. So the strategy was working. We were building a reputation in the world of sports when we were finally, had the opportunity to host the National Sports Festival. The National Sports Festival, which was in 1980, I'm going to screw this up. It's 82 or 84. Someone on here would know. 84. I see 4 fingers. 84. The National Sports Festival was really our first national event in the Olympic space. The Sports Festival was basically like a domestic Olympics in an off-Olympic year. And it attracted some of the best athletes in Olympic sports from around the country to compete here. And it really helped us grow a national reputation for the ability to host large sports events. That national reputation and successful event was very helpful just a few years later in 1987. In 1987, the Pan Am Games, were supposed to be hosted in Chile. And unfortunately for Chile, they were in a bit of a civil war. So that wasn't going to work out very well. But because we had such a great reputation and success, they relocated the Pan Am Games to Indianapolis on relative short notice. That would be the moment that I believe, and I think many of the founding members of the Indiana Sports Corp believe, we really cemented our reputation and our strategy in attracting amateur sports. The Pan Am Games were an incredible moment because this was not just a national moment where we were demonstrating that we were capable of hosting large events. This was an international moment. Folks from other countries that could see us, and we knocked it out of the park. In fact, the Pan Am Games still exist. I've had conversations with people who host those games, and they tell me to this day that those Pan Am Games in 1987 were the best they ever had. And it was really a launching point for us to attract not only other Olympic events, but a variety of other events, that led to really the reputation that allowed us to attract the NCAA to choose here. It's allowed us to develop our reputation with the Big Ten Conference. It's allowed us to step up and serve on the biggest stage to host these one-off professional sports moments like the Super Bowl. It's really just been an extraordinary strategy. And it's grown and grown and grown. Over the last 40 years, we have hosted more than 450 national and international sports championships in our community. And that really started from almost next to nothing in the late 70s, early 80s, to just a tremendous top of class in our industry reputation, which is phenomenal. We continue to grow, and we continue to expand, and we continue to look to the future. From a sporting event perspective, this last year, or I should say this year, 2020 and 2021, were poised to be the biggest in our history. We were scheduled in February to host the NBA All-Star Game. The second time we've hosted it, we hosted it in 1985, but this would have been the first time in several years. Followed 6 weeks later by the men's Final Four. Followed, of course, almost immediately afterwards, but with the world's largest single-day sporting event, the Indianapolis 500. Followed by Big Ten Football Championship in December. Followed by the National College Football Championship in January of 22. So much has changed there, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that. But our commitment to attracting and bringing major sporting events to this community has only been doubled down over the last 4 or 5 years, and very excited about the calendar I just mentioned, but also what's in our future related to Final Four championships, men's and women's basketball, and Olympic sports as well. It's really just been a bit of a tremendous run. We also didn't stop on the forefront of attracting sports-related businesses to choose Indianapolis as a place to locate. So I mentioned we very aggressively went after the national governing bodies in the 70s and the 80s. We also very aggressively went after the NCAA, which was located in Kansas City in the 90s. Since then, we've added different national governing bodies. We've added different businesses that do business with sports. Right now, we're currently in year 2 of a sports technology business retention and attraction effort. A partnership was formed 2 years ago between the NCAA, the Colts, the Pacers, our organization, and IndyCar. And the vision was, could we as a partnership be very intentional about attracting the best sports tech businesses in the world to choose Indianapolis as a place where they grow and cultivate? And so we got together with the state of Indiana. We raised about $9 million. And for the last 2 years, each year, we've invited 10 companies who have gone through an application and a vetting process to relocate their companies to the city of Indianapolis and work specifically with those partners and others to help grow and launch their business here in Indy. We just had what we call Demo Day, which is the day where all these companies get together and do a presentation like this to investors around their product. We had 10 companies. We had companies from Israel, Germany, Russia, Ireland, LA, Boston, who all moved to Indy for the purpose of partnering with the great sports tradition that we have here and growing here. And I'm proud to say that many of them are permanently relocating here, I should say, at least opening a satellite office in Indy because of the great partnership we have here. So it's been really tremendous to kind of stay focused on that mission, to kind of stay focused on growing our sports business economy, and then also staying very busy growing our sports event calendar, all with the purpose of positively impacting our community through sports. I do want to spend just a minute to talk about our youth initiatives, and then I'll open up to questions or comments. But, I mentioned how important that is to us. Each of these major events offers an opportunity to leave a legacy in our community around sports. And I talked a little bit about what we do on the swimming side, but I don't want to overlook the broader picture. Every year we give away literally tens of thousands of pieces of sports equipment to nonprofit youth serving organizations throughout the state. In fact, just recently we gave away almost 30,000 soft shell football helmets to players across the state. We give away, and this is all new stuff. This is stuff that we buy through dollars that we raise and give away in partnerships with our vendors. We have a great program with Dan Dockich. If you guys listen to Sports Talk Radio, if you do, you either love Dan Dockich or you hate Dan Dockich. But on this topic, we love Dan Dockich because he helps us raise money to buy bikes to give away to children. We'll give away over 100 bikes to kids in need in our community this year. That includes bikes, helmets, and a lock, which is fantastic. We give away about $300,000 a year in grants to those organizations. Those grants can go for operational needs, or they can go for additional equipment needs. And last and certainly not least, I always think the kids are most inspired when they get to see the athletes in person participating in the sport that they care about. And so we work with our partners around every event that we have to take tickets and to give those away to kids who may not otherwise have the opportunity or the ability to buy a ticket to attend these sporting events and watch these phenomenal athletes. And it's a great way to expose kids to new sports. It's really interesting to see 300 third graders watch a Notre Dame Loyola fencing match, right? You just tell them they're going to go watch sword play and they get all excited, but they learn a lot about a sport most of us probably haven't invested much time learning about if you're not a fencer. It's a very rewarding part of our mission. It's one that I wish got more media attention and we try to draw impact to, but it is very important to me that you all know that it's not the game that we're most excited about. It's the impact that game can have on our community, and that's why we do what we do. So, Graham, Eric, I don't know who's going to lead the Q&A, but I'm happy to kind of dive in there. There's plenty to talk about, that's for sure. So.
No, certainly. I'll pass it to Graham for a second. Graham, do you have any particular questions that you would like to start for Ryan while Graham's kind of pontificating for a second. One of the good questions from Miss Mary Marsh, what kind of response have you had to the bubble concept for sports events?
Yeah, thank you. Great question, Mary. Just for those who may not be entirely familiar with it, when we saw the NBA kind of retreat from their home facilities and coalesce in Orlando under the idea of playing in a secure bubble to protect their players and get their season in, we started thinking to ourselves, well, if the NBA is doing that and the virus isn't improving, we probably need to be really thoughtful about how do we become that answer for college basketball, because we really want to be a good friend to college basketball, not only because we're scheduled to host the Final Four in April, but also because the NCAA is in our backyard. And so we went about working with our partners at the convention center and the hotels, the Pacers, Lucas Oil Stadium, and said, hey, if Orlando can do this, we certainly can do it. We have the right downtown, we're compact, we're connected, we can be secure. And so we went about building a white paper that said, hey, we can build a bubble. We can help you, college basketball, and call us if you need us. Because we didn't have a specific, a series of games in mind, and we didn't know at that time whether or not the NCAA would quote unquote bubble the sport or not. So that's out there, and I'm glad it's out there because the response has been, it's been really, really good. In fact, I think we'll have some announcements early next week that I'll give you a wink and a nod and trust you won't tweet about. But, we think we're likely to announce an event with USA Basketball around the Thanksgiving timeframe. And for those of you who are monitoring other college basketball news, Orlando actually canceled all of the tournaments that were scheduled to take place there. And many of those tournaments have called us and said, hey, Orlando has shut us down. Do you still have the capacity, and are you willing to host our games? And the answer to that is yes and yes. And in fact, I have a call this afternoon with ESPN to work through some of that. So in some ways, I'm very glad that we have done this. I feel very confident that we will continue to attract games to choose Indy, which is exactly what our mission is. But candidly, it makes me a little bit sad that we have to resort to the bubble, right? College basketball is best played not in a convention center, but in a college arena. But that said, it's better to be playing and making progress on the season and giving these athletes the opportunity to compete than it is not to be. So we're very happy to be, the place of choice. And I think you'll see a series of positive announcements, really, I think through January, honestly, around games that we will continue to attract. I'll see if I can show this. One of my favorite things that happened with the bubble so far is if you read the IBJ wrote an article on the bubble, and without my knowledge, they did a caricature of me in this story. And I'll see if I can show it here, but this is supposed to be me building a bubble. And it's been pretty much nonstop hazing from my good friends about whether or not that actually looks like me. And they particularly like my jazz hands, as they call it there. So that's what I've been known for. It's my new nickname now, jazz hands. So.
And you're wearing the same shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Apparently I don't change clothes. I just wear the same thing on every occasion. But, yeah.
So Ryan, if you could just touch on Penske taking over IMS, if you think that has any opportunities for you to bring anything new to IMS, and then if you have any kind of dream type events that you think are attainable in the 5 years. Those would be my kind of two questions.
Yeah, so I'll sort of answer them bifurcated. We as a community, I don't think we've celebrated hard enough that Roger Penske has taken over at Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar. You'd be hard pressed to think of someone, if you just went on pure passion alone, who cares more about IMS and IndyCar than Roger Penske? And it's also incredibly helpful that he's a multi-billionaire, right? So here's an asset in your community that requires a significant infusion of capital. It requires extraordinary leadership and a sharp business mind, and it requires a passion for its history and its sport. And Roger Penske is all of those things embodied. And so I think he will has been, and will be a tremendous leader. He's already demonstrated an amazing commitment to the facility and to the sport. I have not been in Indianapolis Motor Speedway since Mr. Penske has made those improvements for a variety of reasons, but I'm very much looking forward to going back to the race and to seeing all that's been done. And I talk to that team frequently. As many of you may know, my predecessor in this role was Allison Millington. Allison was the leader in the 2012 Super Bowl. Allison is now with Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the IndyCar and in charge of really bringing more major events and hosting those events inside IMS. So again, the perfect leader in the right position. Our organization doesn't really do a whole lot in the way of programming Indianapolis Motor Speedway outside of what they do. They hired my predecessor, and she was much better at my job than I am. So they sort of took the best, the cream of the crop, and imported her, and she's doing great work over there. We offer to be helpful. We do host some events over there, but they primarily drive their own calendar. I'm excited about what he's talking about. He's talking about 24-hour night races. We saw motorcycles coming back. We've seen a variety of historic race car races. I did go out to the office the other day, and a Ferrari was testing something out on the track. I mean, there's just a lot of fun stuff that's out there. And I know with Roger Penske's passion and his mind for business, that the trajectory of that place is straight up, in my opinion.
And Ryan, what about a dream event that keeps you up at night just sweating, that you're so excited to try to bring it to Indianapolis?
Yeah, so one of the things that I would really love to do, and we'll see if this happens or not, it just so happens that there are 32 NFL teams and the NFL, and there are 33 pit stalls at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I would love to have the NFL draft at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I think that would be an incredible opportunity. I'm just envisioning draftees hopping on the back of an Indy car and taking a lap as they make it up to stage. I'm imagining all the parties and concerts taking place in the middle of the, we'll call it the snake pit because I can't think of what else to call it, but the middle of the track. I think it would be a phenomenal experience to, on the pole, to list your draft picks in order the way they're picked. There's just so much synergy there. It's such an iconic venue. And the NFL draft, if we're being candid, I often get asked whether or not we're chasing it, and we do express interest in it, but I have to remind people, it's not actually a sporting event. They don't play anything, right? So, but it would be a great event to have in Indy for sure.
No, that's a great idea. That had never crossed my mind of how that matched up with the first round, second round picks and everything.
Yeah.
So Ryan, as you all have been adapting so quickly to COVID, if you could just touch on, your advice for other nonprofits, keeping everybody as engaged as they were kind of three-dimensionally, and then along the kind of adaptability thought, Victory Field had golf this year, which kind of tickled two of my favorite parts of life. So how have you seen your peers adapt in creative fashions?
Yeah, I think we were all thrown a curveball really hard in March, right? I mean, in March we were supposed to have, we did have the women's Big Ten basketball tournament, the men's Big Ten basketball tournament, the Division I swimming and diving championships, the NCAA regional round for basketball, all in really like 4 weeks. And, we played night one of the Big Ten men's basketball tournament, and we were, sitting courtside in essence as Fred Hoiberg, the coach of Nebraska, was escorted off the court in the middle of the game, sweating and coughing and demonstrating every symptom you wouldn't want to see. And the world basically stopped. The Big Ten canceled basketball, quickly followed, were all the other NCAA events, including, swimming and diving. And so, our initial reaction was, hey, we need to wind these events down. We need to be responsible, healthy, think about our office. But we also need to have a mindset of adaptability. You know, we talk about being Gumby. Who's familiar with Gumby, right? That little green cartoon character that can bend in any direction. Because we suddenly found ourselves as a company that for the foreseeable future didn't have a mission, right? I mean, our mission was to attract people to Indy to go to major sporting events. So we had to be very adaptable, very flexible. And we had to, in my mind, we had to have a bias toward action, right? We couldn't sort of shut it down. We needed to pivot and think about, you know, our mission didn't change. We have to now find ways to add value in different ways. And so, you know, we created a lot of virtual events. We hosted Tony Dungy virtually to give a talk to the community about, you know, the importance of mental health. We've created a lot of virtual communications, whether it's emails, virtual content, lecture series. We've invited athletes to come on and speak to our members and patrons and community members. We became the education epicenter for plans on how to open safely certain facilities. And we became the liaison to the state of Indiana in the governor's office on what that means. You know, reopening a grand park is very different than reopening the park next to your neighborhood, right? For sports activities. And so we've tried to be a convener of partners and a consolidator of information and then a sharer of that information so that everyone can be on the same page and that we can get back to our mission as quickly and as safely as possible. We've seen some phenomenal adaptations. You know, your point, Eric, about Victory Field turning into a golf course. I played that, and it turns out I'm as bad at golf at Victory Field as I am on a golf course, but it was still fun and unique. In fact, you know, when the Pacers were in the playoffs down in Orlando, we spun up an event in 24 hours and did a Pacers playoff viewing party at Victory Field and sold tickets to the Pacers Heat game. And we put about 700 people in Victory Field, safely spaced out. Every dollar that was raised was donated to our youth programs you've heard me talk about. And the community got to come down and watch the Pacers. I think we would have sold more tickets if the Pacers had not been 0-3 going into that game. But we did well. We were happy to host them. And so adaptability is the name of the game. You know, we had an event in July. We actually hosted in the middle of the pandemic an Indy Ultimate, which is a downtown urban adventure race. And we had over 1,500 people who, you know, followed the safety protocols, arrived during their time slot, respected distance, used hand sanitizer, wore a mask, and we had 0 incidents coming out of that. And so our goal has really been to show people that, I serve on the Arts Council board as one of the boards I serve on, and I speak a lot to those arts venues and artists who are really suffering. And I say it is possible, and people want to support you to do this safely and give people an outlet. And so I tell them, you know, don't be governed by fear. Realize that half of your audience isn't going to come, and that's okay. But maintain momentum, be smart, but have a bias towards action.
I'm glad that's recorded. I can play that back later and internalize that all, Ryan. This has been very impactful and very, very helpful. I'm glad that you're able to take time out today. So I just say a last question. Having been the chief of staff for Mayor Ballard, what attracted you to your current role?
Yeah, so it actually goes back to, I started my career as a deputy prosecutor. So my career goal growing up was to be rich, because when I was growing up, I wasn't rich. So I thought all lawyers were rich. So I went to law school, and I really wanted to be a trial lawyer. And I thought the best way to get experience as a trial lawyer was to go someplace where you get a lot of trials. So I interned at the Marion County Prosecutor's Office and really loved it. After I graduated, passed the bar, I was there for 4 years, and I loved the work. But after 4 years and, you know, incurring $80,000 in debt and making $29,000 a year, it was actually time to go make that money that I thought I was going to make. So I left the Marion County Prosecutor's Office and went into private practice. And, I discovered two things about myself very quickly. The first was that when I was a prosecutor, I had about 90 major felony cases pending at any given moment. And when I left that and went into private practice, I literally worked on one case for an entire year. And I learned personally that I am much better and much more engaged when I'm working on multiple things at once than I am focusing on one thing at a time. And that's just a personality thing. My wife is the exact opposite, which is probably good for us. The second thing I learned, and I didn't really appreciate it until I left, was how much emotional value and satisfaction I was getting out of community service. When I was a prosecutor, I was helping victims. I was, keeping people safe. I felt like I was doing something positive for our community. And when I went to the practice of law, not that all law is bad, but, I wasn't really getting the emotional fulfillment out of it. And so I made the decision from that point forward that two things were going to guide me as I chose my career. One, would I be busy with multiple topics all the time? And two, would it be in the service of my community? Because I knew that was important for me to do a good job. And so, as you kind of navigate through those different careers that I've had, whether it's serving on the city county council or working for our mayor, that's been the thing that guided me. And when I connected with Allison on this opportunity, I asked that question: do I feel like it's in the service of our community, and will I be busy with multiple things at once? And that was a yes. And it just so happens I'm also happen to be a former, emphasis on former athlete and lover of sports. And so it was a nice intersection for me, and it's something I've really enjoyed over the last 6 years.
I had the opportunity to cook for Allison a while back. So Ryan, in my former career, I was a chef in Manhattan. And when I came back, it was actually Mary Marsh who's like, well, Eric, that's great, but you should start doing Kiwanis fundraisers. So she attended one of these dinners for 6 that I had cooked. And I was actually the food stylist for the Good Morning America segment during the Super Bowl here. So I got to cook for Cam Newton and Miss America.
Nice.
So Ryan, if you need a food stylist, let me know. And if you need an 11th nonprofit, we are accepting applications, Ryan. So again, thank you very much for your time.
I would say, Eric, the key takeaway on the stylist front today is that I need an actual clothes stylist. Now that I've appeared 3 different times in the exact same outfit on this particular conference call. So
I'm guilty of the same thing. I think I have 11 blue shirts, and I have 3 of these same turtlenecks. So I just stick with blue. And you can't go wrong, Ryan. You're hitting it out of the park there, my man. So a donation will be made in your name to Project 44, an Indianapolis-based nonprofit created to raise awareness of the National Bone Marrow Donor Registry, the need for donors, and the impact of a donation of bone marrow can have on a child and an adult battling illness. We'll be hosting another Zoom meeting next week on November 5th with Christina Fagat, Ice Miller, Franchise and Distribution Chair, and Carol Lockhart, Principal Broker, Baum Realty. Everybody have a nice week. Again, Ryan, thanks so much for your time. Happy early Halloween. Everybody stay safe, and we'll see you next week.